this one.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Council. Jeff Harbison. I'm the Administrative Services Director for Clark County Public Health. Part of your role as the Board of Health for Clark County is to set fees for public health. It is in RCW that's your responsibility to approve fees. So the purpose today is to receive guidance from you on development of our 2024 fee schedule. We update fees each year with the budget process. We submit a balanced budget, so part of balancing that budget is calculating what the fees should be. We're going to bring that ordinance forward at the September 27th Board of Health hearing. So the presentation today will go through some quick background, fee model proposals, and then next steps. Oh, this is the wrong. You can open the other one. There we go. Sorry about that. I was looking at my own computer and not watching that. So next slide. All right. Our environmental public health fee revenue, by the way, environmental public health makes up just over 28% of our expenditures in public health, and the fees that support that unit, it's around 26% of our total budget. The difference is other revenues, grants, et cetera, that offset those fees. Environmental public health fee revenue, it funds activities in almost all of our environmental public health programs, drinking water protection, recreational water safety, solid and hazardous waste, both on-site septic permitting as well as operations and maintenance. We refer to that as O&M, and then food safety and school health and safety. Next slide. So the environmental public health fees, they're calculated to align with program expenses. There is no profit built into these. They're strictly calculated just to fund the programs. We have a fee cost base for each program. We then we deduct any program income from those costs. We receive revenue, for example, from food handler cards that are purchased within Clark County. That offsets the fees in the food safety program. So again, there's no profit factored in these fees. Board of Health made the decision in 2010 to not include what was termed greater good costs in the fees. So from 2011 to 2018, program costs were supplemented by county general fund to cover those greater good costs. Greater good, it's work performed by the program, but not related to a specific license, permit, or fee. So complaint investigations, outbreak investigations, you'll see some examples there, residential waste complaint investigation or sewage backup. Someone calls about a food establishment and files a complaint. And then outbreak investigations, foodborne or waterborne illness investigations. Next slide, please. So some timeline going back 2012 and 2016, there were no adjustments made to the fee schedule. They were not entertained by the Board of Health at that time. And the general fund contribution for the greater good was established over that period. 2017-18, that was the last county biennial budget process. The overall fee adjustment was 1.35%. The following year, 2019, that's when the Board of Health adopted the policy and began the direction back towards the 100% cost recovery for all program expenses. It was a journey because the greater good represented quite a bit of work. So those fee adjustments in 2019, you'll see was 29.13% fee increase, and then 2020 through 2022. 14.32%, 9.14%, and then we were almost leveled out. It was 3.19%. In 2023, current fees, there was actually a reduction in fee revenue of 0.04%. And that's the current Board of Health policy. The approval was 100% cost recovery for all programs except drinking water safety and on-site septic permitting, which are set at 90%. To allow for nominal funding during times of economic downturn. Those two programs are impacted heavily by construction activity. So when the economy dips, those programs are they feel it more than other programs, and having some ability to respond to some of the greater good is necessary. Next slide, please. So we've got scenarios for you today, and the decision or the guidance that we receive from you today will be how we craft the ordinance, which we'll bring forward at the September Board of Health. Scenario number one is the current Board of Health policy, and you'll see it results in an increase in environmental public health fee revenue by a total of 5.33%. You'll see school health and safety it's got a 28.33% increase in fee revenue. That is definitely an anomaly. We had 3 new fees 3 years ago based on state mandates around what are called environmental health assessments in the schools. We used the new foundational public health services state grant revenue to supplement or subsidize those 3 fees. That subsidy is now going away, and those 3 fees are going up around 250%. All the other fees in that program are going up 6.06% is what I calculated. So that 28.33 is heavily impacted by those 3 fees where the subsidy was now removed. We do have the 2 programs that are at 90% cost recovery. The fees are actually going down. Drinking water safety 3.39% and on-site septic permitting 5.10%. So this is scenario one, and again, this is what the current fees are based on. This is the current Board of Health policy. Next slide, please. So scenario number 2 increases the cost recovery for those 2 programs from 90 to 95%. And it changes the overall increase in revenue from 5.3 to 6.77%. And in this model, obviously, none of them are going down. And then next slide is scenario number 3. And this sets all programs at 100% cost recovery. And that is 7.95%. So it is 100% the Board of Health decision on where to set these fees. Our preference would be to maintain the current Board of Health policy at 90% cost recovery in those 2 programs. Again, it is merely to have the ability to maintain the ability to respond to greater good activity when the economy does start to decline. These fee models do include us eliminating a vacant position in those 2 programs. Those programs, most staff in those 2 programs work in both programs. And again, this current budget that we will be submitting in August includes the elimination of a vacant position in those programs due to volume is tabling off at least. So next slide.
I'm sorry, Jeff, would you please repeat where the cut in staffing would be?
So the drinking water safety and on-site septic permitting programs.
And are they together? So it would be 1 position?
Yes, it is 1 position working in both programs. It was about 78% on-site septic and 22% drinking water was where it was budgeted. But again, the fee volume has declined. Construction activity is still happening, but it's not happening at the rate it was a few years ago.
Thank you.
Yeah. So again, next steps, last slide is, again, receiving final guidance from the Board of Health today, which we'll use to craft the ordinance, which we'll bring forward at the September 27th Board of Health hearing. This is part of our annual budget process. We bring these forward with the budget again to ensure we land with a balanced budget. So if there are any questions on anything I presented, I can take those now.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Thanks, Jeff. I find your presentations very clear and cogent, and you've been so responsive over the years in responding to the guidance from the council. And 2020 was a tough year that we really boosted these fees. I wasn't clear on which scenario model the Department of Health and was recommending, and I didn't know if
Yeah.
the
So-
manager has a recommendation as well. Was it model number 1 that you were looking at, or?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from council?
Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, it's been some time, this was introduced to myself, at least in a one-on-one a long time ago. Seems like a long time ago anyway. And I remember at the time going through many of these and being supportive of these changes. One of the things that's occurred to me, though, is that I do believe in 100% cost recovery whenever possible. I also believe in that there are moments of greater good. One of the things that I'm hoping to get some clarification on is how much time did I know we spent a lot of time, looking into how much we should increase the fees. Did we spend any time looking at how we could create better efficiencies to reduce some of the costs so that we can offset some of these increases?
It's an excellent question. So public health has a funding issue nationally. It's not just related to environmental public health. So we do all we can to mitigate any expenses we incur for the entire public health department, and environmental public health receives the benefit, and that would reduce our fees. For example, we've made decisions over the years to ensure our county indirect costs, our technology, equipment replacement, and reserve costs are as low as we can possibly make them. And environmental public health sees the benefit of that. We do all we can. We're actually looking at reducing our footprint in the Center for Community Health, which would reduce our rent costs, for example. Environmental public health pays a share of that rent. So we're doing all we can, I would say, to impact expenditures we incur where we can. Obviously, we're almost 80% of our budget is related to staffing costs. So there's a lot we really can't impact ourselves. But we do look at volumes. For example, the vacant position we're eliminating, that's related to where we look at fee volumes when we calculate these fees, and the volume indicated that we did not need that vacant position. So we're doing what we can and addressing it when we see signs like that.
Thank you. I also had a conversation with somebody, and this was quite some time ago. And it's just kind of along these lines, and this could be somewhat inaccurate information because it has been a while, but it just kind of is illustrative of what I'm trying to get at. Is I believe the issue was that they had opened or purchased a restaurant and they made one change, and I think that change was that they added like a bar, and it didn't have any, obviously no structural component change there. They didn't have plumbing in it or anything like that, but when public health came through, it triggered a building permit for this non-structural thing. So it's just kind of some of those things. I don't know how often our two departments talk and really kind of work things through and see how they can create more efficiencies. Because if we can just reduce work, that is a benefit to the community.
Yeah,
I guess
believe
it wasn't
that-
really a question. It was more along the lines of a comment.
And I can say too, there are some permits that actually go through public health, so it's not all in a different department. But yes, there should be coordination between the two.
Yeah, I think that was what happened is they had applied for and received a permit through public health, and then when the inspector went through, there was something, I think it was bar, but I'm not entirely sure, that it was just, why would we require a building permit for that? And it was required ultimately and elevated, so
Okay.
that was just.
So if you're getting questions like that on individuals, please let us know. Otherwise, it's hard to look.
Yeah, in honesty, I think that was raised to me before I was elected, so I would have to look back through my notes and contact that person.
Are there any other questions?
Well, Madam Chair, I'm happy to support Model 1. they are recommending.
Do
I
you want
support that
just a
as well.
thumbs up on that again, Jeff? Because I
Yeah,
give
model-
it
Thank you.
two.
Yes, and as Jeff mentioned, this will come back to council for official approval during the budget process. Did we have 3 thumbs up?
I see Councilor Belkov with
Okay.
a thumbs up.
Okay,
That's
so
3.
it looks like we might have 4 thumbs up. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Council, very much.
Thank you for your very clear presentation as always. That concludes our work sessions for today. It is 10:20.